Oh, he had it on recording the whole time. Okay. Yeah, it's Hungarian, even though I'm Italian.
It's Italian Hungarian?
Italian, Hungarian, good food.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
All right, here we are again on the Crave podcast. I would like to thank once again the Art Institute of Colorado for having us and hosting us today. And I am here with a very special guest. Her name is Lori Marie Muha. She's better known as Shelvis. For those of you who have seen her or heard her, I am here today with Shelvis. So excited. Lori is actually the lead and mastermind behind Shelvis and the Roustabouts. They are the ultimate rock and roll icon band. She sings not only Elvis, but also other musicians of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we're going to hear all about that today, as well as her story and what it means to be a female Elvis in a sea full of Elvises. So, Lori, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Let's start out with an inspiration, something that inspires you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a musician or Elvis or anybody like that. It could be a piece of art. It could be literature. Something that just inspires you that you carry with you.
Well, what inspires me young in life was I went to church a lot, and so it was gospel music.
Mm-hmm.
Inspired me quite a bit at a young age. But and I would have to say that gospel rhythm and blues and Elvis together was the most inspirational music for me.
Okay.
You know.
That led you to this path that we're on
Exactly.
today. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's hear about your story. How did you get started with the Elvis persona, and take us down that path, if you will.
Well, growing up in New Jersey, in Irvington, I lived next door to my aunt, my mother's sister, who's my godmother, Catherine, and she loved Elvis. And I mean, I'm talking like 3-4 years old, and we would just hear Elvis records playing all the time over there.
Okay.
And I go over there and be listening to them, and they say, "Oh, this is good," and be hitting spoons on pots and pans, and it would just get burned in your brain, between Elvis, Jerry Vale, Frank Sinatra, Johnny Cash. Those were the influences as a short period of time that I spent at my aunt's house, and I just really loved Elvis. I don't know why. There was something about his voice that was soothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about him, just loved his voice, just when you're 3-4 years old, you didn't, so I would pull out a little rug during the holidays, because our families would have our big feast during Christmas and Thanksgiving. All my cousins would be there, and I'd put a pencil up to my mouth, and I'd be pretending I was Elvis,
Okay.
in front of the whole family.
So you're performing at a young age.
Yeah. So my grandfather said, let her do it, and my cousins, of course, got sick of it after a while, and they would tease me and stuff because, oh, yeah, listen to Lori and watch Lori again. But I would do it every holiday, start doing the legs and moving around. And I wasn't singing, I was pantomiming, of course, but I was just a little kid. And as time went by, when I was about 8 years old, my cousin Kathleen was in a talent show in high school, and the theme was the 1950s, and they needed an Elvis. So my mother handmade a Elvis shirt and pants, kind of like a fringe, and I still have it.
Oh, really?
I still have it, yeah. And it kind of looked like denim a little bit. It was like a denim shirt, and they had me do 2 songs, Love Me Tender and Hound Dog, pantomime.
Sure.
I was just a little kid. And that was when it all started,
You're like, I'm
going to
be
That
Elvis.
was it, yeah. But I had curly hair. I looked like a Tom Jones Elvis. So.
When we were talking before we recorded, you are a fellow drummer. I also grew up as a drummer.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to play in a rock and roll band, I wanted to play drums.
Yeah.
How did you decide, I'm not going to be a drummer per se, I'm going to just concentrate on this singing and...
It was hard because I really liked growing as a musician, and I didn't want to stop playing, so I played in a lot of rock bands just to keep myself fresh and learn that music part of the industry as well, because eventually I want to get a band to do my show, but it was just a dream. Remember, I'm going from like a little kid to entering tons and tons of contests that I did in Atlantic City
As a musician?
as a singer, as a performer, from modeling to singing to doing dance recitals, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, I had the opportunity to, I don't know if it was an opportunity, but I met Donald Trump when I was like 16. And we were at the Trump Plaza Hotel. He was sponsoring one of the beauty contests there, because that's what he does. You know?
Right.
He was nice. I mean, I didn't, at the time I never knew he'd become president. Oh my God.
I don't think anybody thought that would happen.
So I was like, anyway, so I did that to build up my confidence, to be honest with you, to see if I can do this, to be in this business.
Mhm.
Because that's what you do. Now they have America's Got Talent, and now it's like major corporate, and it's hard to even get your foot in the door to even get on those shows, even if you have talent.
Right.
I've been auditioned for America's Got Talent twice. I had to go to Houston for one audition, and then one was here in town.
Okay.
Now, of course, what I did, they liked what I did, but because of the licensing, they couldn't have me on the show.
Oh, right.
So it kind of was a bummer for me.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't do impersonators anymore. The beginning of when they first started, they had one Elvis guy on there, and I think because Priscilla knew him, and she gave the rights for him to go perform, young guy.
Right.
And then I think one of the person I saw did Britney Spears, but I think there was a lawsuit or something, so they don't do that.
Well, how was Shelvis born? Like, when did you decide to take on that persona? And
Well, for the longest time, I was doing impressions of males because I wanted to create a show that was like no other, and I still did females. I mean, I sang with the Roustabouts, Joan Jett, you know, I sang just regular songs as a female in my band, and even just in shows, you know, as myself. But everybody does that, you know.
Right.
It's like, even if you were, you know, back in those days, you know, even if you were Adele, it was still hard to get your foot in the door.
Sure.
Because it was a different time.
Yeah.
Things were different as far as being discovered. So I said, you know, I gotta create something, you know. So I watched these films, Victor Victoria with Julia Andrews, and I was watching Mrs. Doubtfire, and I watched Tootsie, and I got this really mastermind idea that I could put all these characters, male characters, that I loved, who were all over my wall growing up.
Yeah.
Because they were like, I was in love with them, you know, it was like teen idols, you know. Elvis was all over my wall. I was a huge John Travolta fan, huge.
Yeah.
Love John.
Huge.
I do it the best John Travolta in the planet.
I think singing it was really good. What I've heard, but you do them as just vocal.
Yes, if you were sitting here with me, you would think you were talking to him. See, so it's totally. Lori is a fantastic. She's a fantastic entertainer. I love her. She's just great. Really, she's just awesome. But anyway, so I took all my male characters, and I'm a little nervous. I haven't been in an interview in a while, so I'm just like trying to think of all this stuff. And most of the characters that I didn't have patted down vocally were the hardest, which was Tom Jones.
Sure.
But I loved Tom Jones. I used to watch him as a kid. I said, I gotta do Tom Jones, you know. So I just practiced every day for like 5 years straight.
Yeah.
And I was testing it on different people, and then one day I said, you know what, I'm gonna be in characterization. So I did shows in characterization, and people just started loving it. But it wasn't until I entered a contest up in Black Hawk in 1994 or 5, I think it was, and it was the first search for Elvis,
Okay.
and it was all men, and I was the only female. So, and they weren't going to let me do it, and I said, why? I said, just because I have 2 things in the wrong spot, that doesn't mean I can't do it,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So they were like, well, you know, you have to audition. So I auditioned, and they were like blown away. And so I got the opportunity, and I beat all those guys.
Wow.
$1,000,
Yeah.
and that's how Shelvis really was birthed here in Denver.
Okay.
Back east, it was slow process. Once I got here, it just like took off.
Right. Right. And when did you move out here? In the 90s?
Yeah, in the 90s I moved out here. Yeah, I came out on vacation and fell in love with.
Oh, that's most of us. That's what I did too.
Rocky Mountain. But that's when it was beautiful. I mean, now it's so many people live here now.
Well,
so
we're
it's
getting
changed,
crowded.
you know.
So, so that was kind of like your first success with Elvis, and that's where Shelvis was born about 20 some years ago.
Yeah, pretty much. See, my friend Trish, she came to me. She said, "You need a name. You need not like." Yeah, I used to call myself just the female Elvis, and that was like, it's too big, it's too long. And I remember when I saw it on a marquee when I was at Yakety Yak Cafe, and that was at Seaside Boardwalk Club. It was 50s Club, and I opened up for Bowser from Sean and I, and Chubby Checker.
Bowser.
I
I remember Bowser.
Those were big highlights for me, being, I was just in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And so, she said, you gotta, why don't you call yourself Shelvis? I'm like, oh man, that's awesome.
It's a perfect name. Yeah.
So, and it stuck with me, and I got it copyrighted so I can put it on stuff and promote it, and just took off from there. And that's who I am. People, when they hear Shelvis, they say, they know who I am now.
Right.
Before the female Elvis, that could be anybody.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. They know Shelvis is you.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. So, the obvious challenge of being a female doing this male act, obviously there's some challenges there, but what's some other challenges that you've had in your career as a musician that you've overcome that?
I'll tell you what, I really was confident as a musician. I think performer would be more the proper word to use.
Okay.
Because I was scared of what was going to happen, how it was going to be received
Right.
by the public. Sometimes it isn't received as well.
What do you do in those instances where you're doing a show and it's like cricket out there in the audience? How do you overcome that?
I overcome it by coming out as a beautiful butterfly in the end. That's how I overcome it. And then it's all better.
I'm not going to give any spoilers away to your show and how that evolves.
That's why I said butterfly.
Yeah, no, it's I've seen Lori perform a couple times now, and it's a beautiful show. And I've yet to see you with the full band, so
Right.
I'm excited for that kind of performance. But it's a phenomenal show that you put on. And
My biggest problem, though, I have to add this, is the, agents in town here are just really mind-boggling to me that they call like this. My manager Gary Osborne, he's been trying to get on this talent agency that she books a lot around town, but she's just real adamant about it because when he talked to her about me, and she got our packages and her promos, and she knows we're good. She knows we're a great show, but she just says, "Oh, you mean the girl that dresses like a boy?"
Mm.
I don't have any interest in that.
Yeah.
That bothered me a little bit.
Yeah. Closed-mindedness.
Huh?
I said closed-mindedness.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So I said, Gary, you know what? We're gonna get that, and somebody else is gonna come along and they're gonna grab that brass ring and it's gonna turn gold, and then that lady's gonna be sorry for what she said.
Right.
Because, not only is it not professional how she spoke to you about me, but it's really ignorant. This is a world, this is 2017, 2018, it's a world, very colorful world. And if you can't share all the colors with everyone, then you need to get out of the business.
Right.
That's
You're going to be
what
left
I'm saying.
behind. She'll be left behind.
That's what I'm saying, that's one of the things that really bugs me.
Well, you have a day job, right? Like a
Yes,
quote
yes.
unquote day job?
Yes, I do.
So my question would be then, have you ever worked as a full-time professional musician and didn't have a day job?
Only when I was unemployed. But
Okay.
no, I've always had a day job because I have children, and I have responsibilities, and healthcare and stuff doesn't
Right.
come so easy in the show business world.
Sure.
So I've always had to have a day job. So yeah.
Would you give that up, the day job?
Oh, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I was making enough money where I could take care of things that I need to take care of in the real world, sure, yeah. Even if you just paid my bills, you didn't have to pay me. Just give me free healthcare and pay my bills, and I'll tour all over the world for
Right.
you. Because it's the love, it's the passion. That's why you're in this business. That's why we do this.
Absolutely.
And this is how people, you make them go home and say, man, I had the best time of my life there. That was so much fun.
Right.
This was a great show. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about me. It's about them.
Right. I interviewing artists, I don't ask this question, but I always think when I talk to friends, I'm like, if you didn't get paid to do what you're doing, would you still do it? And most of my friends say, heck no, and artists are like, absolutely, like I do this and I don't get paid already, so.
Well, I mean, let's be realistic here. Most artists in this town don't make a living being an artist in this town unless you're signed on to a label or you're already there, so.
What do you think how do you make that transition from being an artist who loves what they do to taking that leap to full-time, this is my profession, this is what I get paid to do, or this is what I do, and I don't have to worry about the bills or the insurance or any of that kind of stuff? How do you make that leap?
Well, then you have to adjust to it, and you also have to keep, you're very focused, because you gotta be careful that you lose that passion when you're doing this as a job.
Right.
You have to be serious about it, and you have to have your ducks in a row as far as your responsibilities, that this is the way you're gonna be doing it this way, in this show, this town, this stage, this is the lighting, this is, and you have to be careful that you don't get caught up on all that and get stressed out, because then you lose the passion.
Mm-hmm.
And you really need to sit back and some of my favorite people like Bruce Springsteen, he would always say stuff like, just go home and spend time with your family for a while, go back on the road, bring them with you. But when you're done with the show, just go back home and be with your family, your friends, and don't think about it. Just leave it there.
Yeah.
That's what he did. So that's what you have to do. You have to kind of leave the job part there, but still keep the passion.
Right. Well, I imagine as a musician, if you're touring and doing 300 shows a year or something crazy like that, like you can get burned out pretty easily.
Well, and most people probably do get burned out, but I think that's why a lot of the artists today don't do tours like they used to, and their shows aren't as long.
Yeah.
If you noticed. I mean, Springsteen does 4 hours.
Yeah.
And he's over 60. That's a guy who loves what he does.
Right, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
He loves performing.
And so, but then you have these newer acts out there do hour-and-a-half show. Boom. Done. 2 hours if tops.
Right.
They won't come out and do 3 encores. 1 encore, you're gone. And it's kind of like the sterile thing I talk about, the sterile performance where everything is like, I don't want to be like that, I want to be able to be open and not everything perfect during the concert, If I want to just do another hour, I will.
Yeah.
I want to be able to be free like that. And if I want to be able to take time off, I want to take time off to, reboot myself.
Right.
And you got to recognize that too, because you remember Elvis performed 7 days a week, 2 shows a night, most of his career.
Right.
And it really did.
And he got burned out.
Oh yeah, he did.
That's right.
I mean, look what just happened to Justin kid. He just
Yeah.
he just said, I'm not gonna tour.
He lost his mind for a while. I mean, just like Britney a few years ago, lost her mind.
But they can do that if they want.
Right.
Yeah, it might hurt your career. Maybe not, but maybe he was overwhelmed. We don't walk around in his shoes, so we don't know. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
We just lost some artists now because of depression and not, Soundgarden and the lead singer Chris, and I mean, one never wants to be in that position where you get depressed or sad or whatever.
Right.
Because you're working too hard.
Right. Regardless of what you're doing, whether
Exactly.
it's music or going to pound the
Exactly. You have to
9 to 5.
recognize it. You have to recognize it and work out. Eat right, do yoga. Go.
I like that. Mind, body, spirit.
Yeah,
here,
well, that's
here on the podcast.
That's stuff you got to do. Yeah.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So we talked about the birth of Shelvis
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s, 95, 96. During your time as Shelvis over the past 20 years, what in your mind has been like the biggest success that you've had? Like a great show or a great performance or a great interaction with somebody or just something that really sticks with you?
The biggest success hasn't yet come.
No? I like that answer.
No.
Yeah. What about until that biggest success? Like what do you love most about your performing when you do the shows?
My fans.
Yeah.
Just the reaction of my fans, their faces and singing and dancing of all ages, we were at the Arvada Festival 2 weeks ago, and there must have been about, I don't know, a couple of thousand people there. And everyone from a 4-year-old little girl to a 90-year-old woman, they were out there just dancing. It was the longest conga line I ever saw
That's cool.
when we were doing Viva Las Vegas, and they were just hooting and hollering and cheering. They didn't want us to leave the stage, and that's what I love.
How do you keep the enthusiasm with you or with you and the band when you're playing to like a dead crowd or a small crowd?
I always tell the band, always play like there's a million people, even if there's just one person. I'm gonna tell you a story, and this is true.
Yeah.
You know where La Junta is, right?
No.
It's like way south, like almost to.
Oh, here in Colorado?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Southern Colorado, it's almost in
Yeah.
Mexico, New Mexico.
Right, New Mexico. So this lady was such a huge fan of mine. She paid me $1,000 to go down there and sing to one lady, the whole band.
Oh yeah, the whole band.
The whole band. She paid for our rooms. She paid for us to eat. She paid for our gas, and of course we only had to play 1 hour for $1,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, and to me, that's pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
And it was this little divey little Latino club. I thought we were gonna get killed in there, I swear. But they had the best Mexican chili in town.
Yeah.
It was good. And the rooms we stayed in weren't that great either. I felt like I was, prison or something. It was like all brick wall. It had a bed, old TV, not flat screen, mind you. Yeah,
Not flat screen.
Yeah, so that was an interesting. That she wanted Shelvis for her birthday, and she made it happen.
That's cool. That's cool. And you would play to her the same as if you would if you were playing to 1,000
We did
people.
the whole thing,
That's
and
great.
she loved us.
Yeah.
And because she loved us so much, she gave us an extra $500. I don't know where she got this money from. I think her dealer was in the back of the club or something. I mean, card dealer.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Playing cards.
Playing cards.
So.
What's a lesson that you've learned? I mean, your act is so different from a normal musician, and I think it's very original. What's a lesson that you've learned that you along the way?
To really be humble.
Okay.
Be extremely humble about my talent, because I don't think I'm talented.
Why not?
Because I don't. I just think it's a gift. I think when I was born, God gave me this gift, and I recognize it, and you either use it or lose it, and I have to be humble about that.
But you've also practiced endlessly.
Yeah, but it's a seed.
Okay.
He gave me the seed.
The seed was
I had to
planted.
water it.
Okay.
If you don't water a plant, it doesn't grow, right?
Right. It dies.
So, and I, I have a huge faith in God, so he gave me this opportunity, and so I respect that. I think that's the biggest thing in my life, and I mean, I feel it in my heart. It's not just in my head, it's like in my heart.
Right.
It's like you're born, it's hard to explain. It's like you're born with a feeling that you get when you're an entertainer, and I think Elvis was a lot like that. I don't think he cared about anything else but being on that stage,
Yeah, I'm a big Prince fan,
He
and
was the same way.
and I noticed looking back after Prince died, like looking back, especially some of the earlier
Yeah.
things that were recorded of him,
Yeah.
when he got up on stage, you could see that he just loved to perform,
Loved it, yeah.
and that was it. He didn't care what anybody thought of him or anything. He just loved to get out there and perform, and the crowd always responded. So.
Well, like I said, you're born with it, and when you realize you're born with something like that, you don't take it for granted.
Right.
You have to really mold into what you believe is going to benefit other people from it. If you keep it all for yourself, then what good is it?
Sure.
And there's a lot of artists like that.
It's true. I mean, I think there's a lot of people like that.
That's true.
Who aren't living their passion, or
Exactly.
like Tony Robbins used to always say. I think he still does say, but he always says like live your passion. And I think I may have heard that 20 years ago, but for me as I get older, it means something different.
Sure, yeah.
And it's just like if you can do what, like you said, if you can do what you were meant to do and what you love, then everything else works itself out.
Exactly right. And that's like I said to many of my band members, I said, how many of you here, you know, because sometimes we get little arguments and, you know, little, this isn't right, that ain't right, and whatever, but we work it out. And I said, how many of you here thought that you would be in a really successful band at the age that you are?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody could raise their hand. They never thought they'd be in any band whatsoever.
Yeah.
Performing and being able to be in decent venues and be treated the way you're being treated. And because a lot of bands aren't treated very well. You're just another bean in the jar.
Right.
You know, and so when you get that respect, you better be humble about it and be thankful, you know, because one day it can be all gone.
Sure.
And then, you know, when you are old in that nursing home and you're sitting there in your wheelchair, walker, or whatever, you're not going to be one of those grouchy old people that didn't do anything with their lives. You're going to be happy and you're going to talk about stuff.
Right.
And this is the stuff you're going to talk about. And your kids are going to say, hey, Mom and Dad, do you remember when you did this? And, you know, and they're going to be grown and you're going to be older and you're going to say, you know, I accomplished something in life because it was my passion and I went through with it and I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
And then the band gets really quiet and they don't say a darn word. Because they know. And none of them quit.
No.
I may have fired 2 people, but none of them quit. So
How many are in the total band? How many people?
we usually have 7, but we incorporated another guitar player, Mike, because we wanted Dran to have, my other lead guitar player, a break every now and then. And if one's gone, the other one can take over because he has children and, you know, have sports and recitals and other things that are going on. So sometimes he's out of town.
Right, right. I've seen you perform as a solo, and I've seen you perform with a handful of the band members.
Mhm.
How often does the full band
All the
perform?
time. Matter of fact, we have one next week
Yeah.
at the.
Do you perform weekly, the band?
Sometimes, you know, pending. Sometimes we have 2 a week. We have 2 back to back, depending on Gary. Gary sends out the schedule, and he'll get the phone call. But we always schedule in advance because people, you know, are
People have
doing other
lives,
things
sure.
and stuff. But we have practice every other Sunday and every Wednesday.
Yeah, you were saying you practice twice a week,
Yep,
and without fail.
without fail.
Yeah.
Unless somebody's sick or there's an emergency, then we don't.
This goes back to watering the seed. Practicing without fail, or practicing like on a regular basis.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to because practice
Keeps
is
you-
perfect, and also it gives confidence in my players so that
Mhm.
when we're out there performing, especially if it's in a huge venue, they don't, you know, feel uncomfortable with themselves. You know, you want them to feel confident. And if you don't play for a while, you can get kind of rusty and
Sure.
you can mess up. I mean, I mess up all the time, but that's the beauty of you know, it's kind of like being an improv person. Improvisation is like the greatest talent I ever was taught in school.
How much of your act is improv? Because
A lot of it is.
you talk a lot to the audience.
Yeah, a lot
and
of
you,
it is. Even, you know, and that goes back to Elvis. Elvis improved all the time, you know. A lot of it is improv because we want to be real.
Mhm.
We don't want to be just like I said, that sterile Elvis or that sterile performer where everything's exactly the same.
Right,
Because
right.
it's boring, you know. It's boring for us, you know.
Do you have a favorite Elvis song that you like to perform?
Nope.
Do you have songs that you won't perform? Elvis songs? Like, I just can't stand this. I'm not gonna play this one.
You know, this is really bad for Elvis fans out there, so I don't know what to say.
We're keeping it PC here
I
on the
try to keep it- I
podcast.
try to keep it,
I can appreciate that.
you know, so.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to a musician or an artist that could help them when they're starting out?
Don't ever say can't. The word can't is not in your vocabulary, ever.
You just said it twice.
I just-
As a reference.
As a
As a
reference,
reference, yeah. That's like saying no, right? Like,
Yeah,
Can't do this.
Never say can't. My mother always told me that through high school and, you know, when I was in sports and stuff, and she said, never say can't. I don't want to hear that. It's not in your vocabulary.
it's good advice, actually. It's real
And
good
so
advice.
that's the only thing I can give to those out there who are artists, and never let anybody tell you what to do. You know, unless it's gonna be good for you, benefit you. Don't ever let anybody ride your shirt tail either,
Okay.
because that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And just remember the passion and be humble. remember to be humble. Because once you lose that innocent part of you, it's over. People don't like you anymore.
How do you walk that line? Like where you're like, I know that I'm good at this. I know that I please the crowd. I can see the results.
Because I'm around other Elvises and I see their behavior,
Okay.
and I don't ever want to be that.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you have family that kind of keeps you humble, that says, you know, you're good, but like let's not let it get to your head?
Of course, yeah, all the time, yeah. Because my family's in my family's in show business, and I mean it's a job, you know, too. But yeah, I know I'm not the greatest. I just know I'm good at what I can do, what I know what to do in my show. I never put myself on a pedestal as far as that goes, but I am thankful for the talent that was given to me
Mhm.
at the time I was a baby. So I just appreciate that.
How did you overcome this stage fright, or did you ever have stage fright? Do you get stage fright?
You know, I was actually really shy when I was a little girl. Really shy.
Yeah.
I don't stage fright anymore, but I think I lost that stage fright when I started doing the contests and winning contests and getting exposed to audiences more and more and more,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how that went away. Otherwise, I wouldn't say I was stage fright. I think I wasn't confident enough.
Okay.
I felt like people would laugh at me if I wasn't good enough. And that's where the practice comes from,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And then once you see that you have achieved stuff, you know, winning contests and having people going up and telling you you're good at what you do, and, you know, and having also support of my mother. My mother was humongous, huge fan of mine, and she supported me 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Always was my backbone, so.
I hear that a lot with artists who talk about like their family, of a family member, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a spouse who is a support. Like, you have to have that support system, and if you don't, like, you can still make it, you can still be successful, but if you don't have people that allow you to do what you want to do and support that,
Right.
then it makes it a lot harder.
My family always supported me. My brothers, they were always confident that I was going to be doing this till I'm old and gray. They were pretty confident. So, but like I said, you know, it's just something you just don't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be a tribute artist or impersonator or singer or drummer or whatever. It's instilled in you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you ever get nervous before you go out and perform
Never.
these days?
Nope.
No.
I can't wait to get out there. I get bored backstage, actually. I'm like, oh, let's go.
Do you think that comes with the confidence of knowing that
Oh, yeah.
you can do the job?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it goes back to practice.
That's right.
Put the time in.
And if something doesn't go right, I'll do something where in the show the band will go, what the hell is she doing?
Yeah.
So-
Well, I think that's good too. You know how to overcome because something's gonna go wrong. You know it's gonna go wrong.
Yeah, I'll
How do you
stop
roll
them
with it?
right in the middle of a song.
Have you done that before?
Oh yeah. And I've seen it done with famous people. I mean, when I saw Blondie, Garbage was singing, and she just stopped the band and apologized and started it over again.
Really?
And it was green. I'm like, phew. I am so happy I am not the only one who does that.
Well, at least if you didn't do like a Mariah Carey did and walk off stage.
Oh, please.
Like-
Yeah, well, she's not a humble person, so
Right.
that's another person that I'm not real fond of, so I'm not big on pop stars like that.
When they lose that humility.
Yeah, you can't. It's just, it's wrong. You know, people are starving. Less a banquet, and people are starving to have some of that banquet that
Right.
you already have,
Right.
you know?
Give them a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, so.
Well, we talked at the beginning. You said that you were inspired by gospel and blues.
Yeah, gospel blues, yeah.
So-
Mhm.
Who are 3 artists that inspire you? Obviously, other than Elvis or other famous singers that you impersonate, who are 3 artists that you are inspired by?
I love Buddy Holly. I'm a huge Buddy Holly fan. I just thought he was such a unique writer, and his sound and his guitar playing was just over the top. I think he was way ahead of his time, you know?
Yeah.
And I just loved that sound that he had, and his writing ability. I am a huge, believe it or not, I'm a huge fan of the Four Seasons and the
Mm.
doo-wops. Growing up in Jersey, you're gonna be part of the doo-wops, no matter
Okay.
what. And so the Platters and, you know, the Four Seasons and the Temptations and all that, those were like super groups, man. Those were like, their vocals were just over the top.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
With the harmonies and.
Oh God, yeah. And that's hard to do. I mean, it's just hard to do.
Sure.
You know, and then later on in life, you know, I liked, you know, Steely Dan and other groups, Boston, and just different bands that I thought were really vocally, because I always concentrated on the vocal for some reason.
Well, because you're a vocalist. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm a
You're
drummer.
here- you hit-
you know, but
You know that when you get out there, do you ever play drums when you tour?
no, not too often.
No.
No.
Do you still have a kit?
Oh yeah, I have 2 kits.
You do.
I have a studio in my house, my basement.
You go down there and jam out.
Yeah, I have an old Roger set. My mother won the lottery. She won a couple of $100, you know, and we were kind of poor growing
Couple
up.
$100.
Yeah.
You make it sound like that. No
$100.
big deal.
Well, back in you know, in the 80s, you know,
Oh, right,
if you
right.
won $1,000, you could buy a decent drum set.
True.
You know,
Absolutely.
so my mom said, "Your sister wants drums, man. I don't know, I can't afford them." So she played the lottery and she won, and she bought me drums, and it's a beautiful Roger set, thick hardware. Now it's a classic. It's a vintage.
Yeah.
They don't make anymore.
Is it pearl?
And I still have it.
What's the shell? Or
It's pearl.
Yeah, there you go.
It's actually tan.
Okay.
Because people were smoking in bars then. So you can see if you take it apart,
It's
you
just
see the white and then the, yeah, so. But I still have it, and it's down in the basement, and my drummer plays on it, and she bought them for me when I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah. I used to go to the pawn shops and buy pieces and put them together,
Mhm.
because I couldn't afford it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just tape them and play on that. And then she finally bought me a professional set. Those guys were heavy.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Do you have a desire to play?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
when you
just
show?
playing this
Like-
weekend.
okay.
No, yeah, I do have sometimes. Sometimes I want, but I want to, you know, step on Kurt's shoes. My drummer.
Okay.
That's his baby.
Yeah. All right.
You know, so him and I bang heads to practice sometimes because he seems to forget I'm a drummer. You know,
Oh, right,
and,
right.
and
You're
the
like-
bass player. So when he's on tempo or something's not right, I'll say, "Kurt, it's wrong." "No, it isn't." No, he's the kind of guy that writes the measures down.
Okay.
I don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's,
By ear.
yeah,
That's how I play
self-taught,
too.
you
these
know?
days.
I'm like, dude, oh, please, you know, I love you, you're a great drummer, but listen to me. And then he will, and I'll say, "Can I get behind there, please?" And he'll say, "Okay," and then I'll do it, and then he'll catch on.
Right.
Because he's a rock drummer. This is the first time I think he's ever played in a band that's so, the dynamics of drumming, he has never played before.
Yeah.
Like, he never thought he'd play like Tom Jones, or, you know, Buddy Holly. He never thought he'd be playing that kind of stuff.
Right.
You
Right.
know, classic rock drummer.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
That's
So,
what-
you know.
That's what I do. And a few years ago, I got invited to play in like this Sunday gospel band that was like blues and,
Uh-huh.
and kind of like southern blues and jazz. And I didn't know really any of the music, like any of the kind of, you know, the Christian music or anything, but I
Right.
knew the sound, and so I
Right.
could play along with the sound. And it was
Right.
so much fun. It was such a different thing from
Right,
what I grew up
right, yeah,
playing. Yeah, so I
totally,
can
yeah.
totally see that.
It happened to me once. I auditioned for, they needed a drummer for, it was I think it was a 24 set big band, you know,
Mhm.
doing a dance, and their drummer quit. And it was all old guys. They were all like maybe in their 60s.
Yeah.
They were playing horns and, you know, trumpets and trombone and all that stuff. So they needed a drummer, and I was a pretty big fan of Glenn Miller,
Uh-huh.
because my grandmother listened to him all the time.
Okay.
So I auditioned and they hired me. And I
Wow.
was this hot chick, young girl, and they wore all white and I wore black.
Oh yeah.
And I was playing all this stuff and they were amazed. And that was pretty fun. I overcame something like that. I didn't think I was able to do that, but it was such a tremendous opportunity. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good when you step outside of your comfort zone
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit and try something different.
Yeah.
Usually, it either ends up in disaster or it ends up being really, really fun.
Well, they were surprised. They were shocked.
Yeah.
Because there was
They
all
didn't think
these
you could do
guys
it,
out
or-
there playing, and my timing was like spot on. They were just really, we want to hire her. Okay, because I was cute. You know, a bunch of old guys.
Got to bring a little color to the
Oh,
group,
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think holds most artists back? You talked about like overcoming the fear with confidence and things like that. But what do you think holds artists back from becoming professionals or becoming the best they can be?
Well, nowadays everybody could do their own, everything's on iTunes and YouTube and stuff, so you have, I think it's easier to overcome your fears because you're getting into the technical side of it and you're getting exposed to audiences before you play live. And then you get, you know, a taste of hanging in different groups of people. Where I was, it was limited.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest fear for artists is failure.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Fear of failure.
Failure, I think.
So how did you overcome it?
I told you, can't is not my vocabulary.
Going back to the can't. I like that. I like that. So what happens if you do fail? Like you said you would stop a show or you would stop a song and reset.
Well, I don't
Like,
I don't think that's a failure. I think that's something that you work on. You just use it as an example that you don't do it again and correct it.
right.
Failure is when, like, you crash and burn and you...
Walk away and give up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
So if you crash and burn, you figure out why you crashed and burned, and then
Yeah.
try it again and try not to crash and
Well,
burn.
the Etta James story is a perfect example. You know, she was a heroin addict and she crashed and burned and she got this new agent guy, and he helped her and
Mhm.
got her clean, and then she became huge and successful, and he changed her whole life because he believed in her and he got her clean and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was a tremendous voice, and great talent.
Did you ever? Can I get personal here?
Sure.
Did you ever fall into like the drug crowd? It seems like drugs and music go hand in hand together.
You know, I experimented stuff, you know, on and off when I was in my 20s, but I never got addicted to anything, ever.
How do you keep that out? Because you see it happen all the time. I mean, you talked about Bieber, like he fell apart there for a while, and then we have musicians. Whitney Houston fell apart.
Addiction is, I don't want to say this, addiction is a different type of thing now than it was when I was growing up. I also grew up in a smaller town, so there's small scales of addiction, so to speak, than the big cities and stuff. I feel like I went to the big city, but I think this has to be,
I mean, let's look at Elvis.
I just think it's the
Yeah,
individual. The individual has to just say, no, man, I'm not going to do this, you know, and step outside of that circle. I mean, you know, it's easier said than done. Like I said, I don't walk a mile in a lot of people's shoes. A lot of your country artists, a lot of people who were very highly respected in the industry become alcoholics. They have different demons, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be drugs. I think, and I'm pretty sure it's because I had a pretty strict mother and my family values meant a lot to me. And there's unconditional love in my family, so I never felt that I had to use a substitute or substance to feel loved or
Yeah.
cared about, to the point where it became an addiction. When I did it, it's because I was partying.
Right. You're gonna try it, and then you're like, okay.
And that
Not
was
for me,
it, you
not
know?
for me, I'm done.
But it wasn't something that I had to do to get through the day,
Right.
you know?
Well, so I mean, and I guess it's been like this throughout history. I mean, Elvis died from prescription drugs,
Right.
and I mean, you hear so many famous people and musicians,
Including Prince.
Prince,
Yeah.
Jackson. I mean, Whitney.
Well, I think when people like them come as big as they are, I mean, as big as they are,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's different situations for Whitney. I think Whitney always dabbled in drugs. She was from Newark, New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
rough side of the tracks. But it comes down to loneliness. I think Whitney was lonely. There was something.
Something she was trying to fill, a void she was trying to fill.
Yeah, well, we don't know her childhood either. We don't
Right.
know a lot about it. I know her mother sang for Elvis, and she met Elvis,
Mm-hmm.
and her mother was in the show business, but she quit to be with her family. So we don't really know what happened to Whitney as far as her childhood and why that happened. With Elvis Presley, I think it's like, how do you go from a one-bedroom house with no running water, no toilet, just an outhouse, to being one of the biggest personalities in the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at that time, he was it.
Yeah. Oh,
There
yeah.
wasn't like a Michael Jackson and Frank Sinatra, but they came later. But he was like
He was
it.
the top.
He was the top of the, and try to live still that humble country boy. I mean, Priscilla said it the other day on radio. She said Elvis never changed. His lifestyle changed as far as his house, his personal items and things like that. But he never changed.
Mm-hmm.
He always stayed that humble boy from Tupelo, Mississippi. He wanted to be that humble boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, and he did everything for his family. Never did it for himself. Never cared about money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he got in a depression, and yeah, it's very easy to do drugs, to go to sleep, to wake up, to deal with other kinds of pressures, and I think after a while you just get addicted. And if you're the money bags, of course nobody's going to stop you.
Right. If you're the money train,
Yeah,
they want
nobody's
the
gonna-
train to keep going.
I mean, people could tell you, Elvis need to stop, and he'd get mad, because, he felt he was doing it because he needed it,
Right.
It was the same thing with Prince, he felt he needed it because he was in pain.
Right.
Same thing with Michael Jackson. Then again, we don't know what Michael Jackson's childhood was like, I mean, I don't walk around those men's shoes, or whoever who isn't famous, but my suggestion is, don't put yourself in that position. If you know you're in a room full of people doing heroin, walk away.
Yeah.
Don't even try it, because it will kill you.
I think that it goes back to what kind of the theme of this is like staying humble and
Yeah, walk away from, because,
knowing that you have talent, knowing that talent's going to be recognized, but don't get too big for your own britches.
it's true, it really is. I mean, you gotta remember now, you're dealing with these egos. Those folks had huge egos.
Yeah.
Whitney and Prince and Michael, and I think that's the only thing they were hanging on to, and then the human side kind of got lost, and that's why they had substance abuse.
Right.
I mean, that's just my
Wow, we're getting
opinion.
heavy.
I don't know.
We're getting really heavy here.
I don't know. I don't know. All
Well,
I can
for-
say is, don't do drugs, because you will fail,
Right.
whatever that may be.
So you bring it back a little bit lighter.
Yes.
Let's get lighter. You had a long career as Shelvis,
Mhm.
and your focus is on these like 50s, 60s, 70s
Mhm.
musicians. Is there anybody today that you listen to that inspires you? That's modern music.
Oh, that's a hard question. I listen to a lot of Colorado, the Colorado Sound radio station, and I listen to a lot of the local artists here,
Mhm.
and I have a lot of respect for a lot of the new artists that are coming out of Colorado, such as the Lumineers and other artists too. And different artists inspire me on a daily basis that I hear in non-commercial radio. I hate commercial radio. I
Yeah.
hate it. That's a hard question, because every day I'm listening to new music and getting into new artists every day. My kids keep me up on stuff,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Kids
I
are
keep
good that way.
sometimes I keep them up on stuff too. So I'm very open-minded in that aspect. But I gotta tell you, my favorite singer right now. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It
But
really is hard to say.
but you listen to a lot of local music and
Yeah, I love the local Colorado music sound. I think it's great talented people here. There's a
Yeah.
lot of talented artists here, a lot of great bands, writers, musicians.
live venues. I
Live
don't know if
venues,
this is
yeah.
still true, but the governor said last year that we have more live music venues than Seattle.
It's true,
So.
it's true. And, of course, the beer industry is, or
Beer.
here.
Beer and music go hand in hand, yeah, for sure.
And a lot of breweries have opened up venues where there's live music more so,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of
Mhm.
like Nathaniel, I do like Nathaniel Rathcook. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he's one artist I'm
Nathaniel
inspired by.
Ratcliffe.
Yeah, I love him. How do you say his name? Nathaniel?
Nathaniel?
Yeah, Nathaniel. We say that wrong, I don't know why. It's got one of those tongue
We'll check.
names.
We'll
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if you had 60 seconds with 20-year-old Lori, what advice would you give her?
Go to college.
Yeah? Did you go to college?
No.
No? Why do you think that you would tell her to go to
Couldn't
college?
afford it.
Why would you tell her to go to college?
To be a better musician.
Okay. Like go to an arts college or a
Right,
music college?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went for a little while. I went to a theater, HB Studios in the Village,
Okay.
but it was expensive. And growing up poor in Jersey, you know, my father wasn't around. My mother raised me and my brothers. It was different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would have went back to college to learn more about, you know, music and the technical side of it, also other instruments, you know, just to kind of educate myself. So when I am at this age, I could have done more on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. But you
as
turned
far
out
as the
okay.
technical side. Yeah, not bad. I mean, you know, like I said, you can't teach somebody to be talented. It just is.
Right.
So I'm thankful for that, and that's really what opened up a lot of doors for me.
Are you familiar with the 10,000 hours theory?
Mm-mm.
Malcolm Gladwell, author, he writes about 10,000 hours, and to become an expert at something, a master at something, requires 10,000 hours of study or work or practice or what have you.
Mm.
And I guess I just thought of like Michael Jordan as a good example. You know, there's a famous story where he was in high school.
Mm.
His high school basketball coach told him to quit, that he would never be a good basketball player. And so he was like, I'm going to prove you wrong, and he set out to become good.
Mm.
And I don't think that he ever realized he'd become one of the best basketball players, but he practiced and he practiced and he practiced and he practiced, and had an outstanding career as one of the best basketball players ever. But he had someone tell him to quit when he was a kid that said,
Right.
You'll never be good enough. And I think that goes along with your can't earlier, like,
No, I
don't
like
listen to
that
someone who
one.
says can't, don't listen to someone who says you can't do this.
No, you don't let anybody tell you that you're not capable of doing something. You are able to do whatever you put your mind to. You can do it.
Yeah.
We've seen it over and over again with people that have been in some situations and they survived those situations because they believed they could.
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy landed a plane right in the Hudson River.
Yeah, right, for sure. Saved a bunch of lives. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. So, you know, some pilots would have said,